Señoronas, señorones, hoy tenemos nuestra última entrevista en el foro Alamos Alliance, el foro que reúne a economistas muy, pero muy importantes de toda Latinoamérica. Y hoy entrevistamos a una de las personalidades más cañonas que he entrevistado en mi vida. Te estoy hablando de Anne Krueger, directiva del Banco Mundial y del Fondo Monetario Internacional. Agradecemos como siempre al Centro Ricardo Salinas Pliego por habernos hecho la invitación a este evento. Anne Krueger fue economista en jefe del Banco Mundial y la primera directora mujer del Fondo Monetario Internacional. Es doctora en economía por la Universidad de Wisconsin. Experta en política económica internacional, es crítica de la intervención gubernamental en el comercio exterior. En esta entrevista hablamos sobre la situación macroeconómica a la que nos enfrentamos hoy en día, los riesgos que visualiza y, bajo su perspectiva, cómo es que las personas y las empresas pueden salir adelante. Gente, consideren que esta entrevista es en inglés. Si quieren ver los subtítulos, váyanse a mi canal de YouTube.
And one of the most talked topics about economics right now, it's inflation, global inflation. In your opinion, is everything that can be done to fight inflation being done?
No, there's lots more that you could do, but a lot of it would be opposed by certain groups that would be hurt by, or they think they'd be hurt by different things. So no, there's a lot more that could be done, even in things like relaxing some regulations that are unnecessary, doing some other things that would cut costs for businesses. In the United States, for example, we could, I think, cut some inflation just by increasing the allowed number of immigrants. Okay. Because already that would alleviate some of the pressure in the labor market. And there are lots of things most countries could do. I'm told by my Mexican economist friends that there are things here that raise costs in ways that they shouldn't, and things like that. So, and of course, inflation is not desirable, and we need to stop it, but of course we do have some other objectives too. And so I think it is a social decision in a democracy how much you do toward inflation and how much you do toward other things. And at what speed. The other thing I would say, though, is also we are in a very strange time in that in past recessions or inflations, we've had history to go on, and it's been given, it hasn't made it perfect. You're still guessing a bit, or you're still estimating. But this time, because the COVID experience is so different, there's much more uncertainty as to what will work, how fast, and so on. And so the fact that more could be done is not necessarily a good thing. There may be something to be said for doing a little bit less. There may also be something to be said for doing more, even on the major tools like what the central bank can do.
Okay. Is this the most important topic that wakes you up at night, or is there another risk that does?
Oh, I think there are lots of risks, and I guess it depends on my mood. But but quite clearly, the threats to the international trading system.
Okay.
Many of which are the fault of the United States, are one of them, because we did have a world system going. Many countries, including I think Mexico, have learned a lot about what's wrong with protection and how much it hurts your own economy. And if we go back to that world, that's going to hurt us in the long run in a very great way, and be harder to reverse even than protection would be. So that's one. Obviously, we worry about the environment, we worry about the energy. There are a lot of problems, and we do our best on all of them, of course, but it's not perfect, and there's always room for improvement. Plus, of course, new problems keep arising. Sometimes from the solution of one problem, you're creating another one.
Yeah, and one of our objectives is to talk to business owners, small business owners, and normal taxpayers. What would you recommend during these times? We have uncertainty, we have high inflation. For a normal person saving at a bank, what would be a personal finance recommendation you give to them?
Well, I suppose the normal person isn't. There's no such thing. I mean, some people are older and ready for retirement. Some are just starting their workforce. Some are starting their families. Some have kids to educate, and so it's very much a stage of life thing. Makes a great deal of difference as to what your finances should be. Somebody in their 20s can afford, I think, to invest much more in stocks and things that will grow over time, whereas somebody who's ready to retire needs to be a little bit sure of their income, just for starters. I think anybody who puts all of their savings into stocks only is probably making a mistake. And everybody who doesn't put anything into stocks is also probably making a mistake. So it's a matter of your own circumstances and where you're at. And I suppose also what your income is. Most, in the United States anyway, most advisors say that they do not think people should start investing, stocks or bonds, until they have 6 months at least in sufficiently liquid instruments so that if they did lose their income, they could last that long without dipping into savings.
Right, this emergency savings that they should have. And what about business owners? I mean, small business are the heart of the economy. What would you recommend right now? Because they're having a lot of uncertainty, high interest rates. What would you recommend to them?
Well, of course, high interest rates are there because, in fact, inflation is going up. So many of them will make out, as we say, like bandits, in the sense of profiting from that inflation. So I'm not so worried about that. I think there is what you asked earlier about what can be done about inflation. One thing that can be done is to stop making policies that help large companies.
Okay.
And that's, I think, pretty important. And of course, when you have large companies around, the small ones have more trouble competing in many ways. And so one of the things small business owners can do is look to make sure that their political representatives understand when they're being discriminated against genuinely. So everybody thinks the world is against them, but in a sense, there is something to the problem for small business.
And today you talked about trade and how it's changing. What would you recommend to small business owners to get a grasp or get an opportunity in this new regionalization, this new area of international trade?
Well, I'm not sure how much we will actually do of regionalization. There are lots of things to be said on both sides of that argument, and it's hard to say. I think in getting informed and finding out what could be done and so on can be very helpful. And how to do that is a little bit country specific. There have been some countries that have been quite successful. South Korea, in its early growth days, when it was really opening up and trying to encourage its businessmen, they opened up a trade office in New York and one in San Francisco, one in London, one in Germany, and one in several other places. And they then had office suites that a small businessman could go and use. As he then met, they had people there who were employees of the government who would arrange appointments for them with buyers of whatever the man wanted to sell or with sellers of whatever the man wanted to buy. In those companies, and I think some arrangements like that in some countries might be useful, but I just don't, I would need to know the specifics of the country and what's now happening to know how important
For example, let's talk about Mexico.
Okay, well, I wish I knew enough to advise.
So, one last question. What would you do if I give you right now $1 million?
I'd smile.
And besides smiling?
Well, I think most likely I would invest most of it, and there'd be some split, of course, between stocks and bonds and perhaps other assets. I'd diversify a bit and not get everything in one or two countries, so that there'd be some European securities and some others.
Oh, that's great. And thank you very much for your time. It's been a great.
Nice talking with you. Thank you.